A widowed father bought a crumbling mansion for $8,000 to give his kids a home, but what he found sealed behind marble walls would either save his family or destroy them forever. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday morning, drumming against the cracked windshield of Axel Morrison's pickup truck like it was trying to wash away more than just dirt. He sat in the parking lot of Maple Ridge Elementary School, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching his 3 kids climb out of the back seat. Maya, 12 years old, held her younger brother Carter's hand, while 6-year-old Sophie clutched her pink backpack like it was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath her feet. They moved slowly through the downpour, and Axel watched Maya glance back at him through the rain-streaked window. She was too young to carry the weight she carried. Too young to wake up early and make breakfast for her siblings when Axel had already left for a job site. Too young to tuck Sophie in at night and whisper that everything would be okay when she herself wasn't sure it would be. But she did it anyway. Emma would have been proud. The thought of his wife hit him like it always did, sharp and sudden, stealing the breath from his lungs. 2 years. It had been 2 years since cancer took her. 2 years since he'd held her hand in that hospital room and promised he'd take care of their babies. 2 years of trying to keep that promise while the world kept demanding more than he had to give. Axel exhaled slowly and put the truck in gear. He had 40 minutes to get across town to a framing job that paid $12 an hour. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. But it was something. The apartment they rented was on the east side of Harrington Falls, a town so small most maps forgot to include it. The place had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen where the linoleum curled up at the edges like it was trying to escape. Maya slept in 1 bedroom with Sophie. Carter had claimed the closet-sized 2nd bedroom. And Axel, well, he'd been sleeping on a couch that sagged in the middle for the better part of 18 months. He told himself it was temporary. Everything felt temporary now. By the time he got home that evening, mud caked to his boots and exhaustion pressing down on his shoulders, the kids were already doing homework at the kitchen table. Maya was helping Carter with math, while Sophie colored in the margins of her spelling worksheet. "How was school?" Axel asked, dropping his tool belt by the door. "Fine," Maya said without looking up. "Mrs. Peterson said my essay was really good," Carter offered. "That's great, buddy." Axel ruffled his son's hair and moved to the sink to wash the day's grime from his hands. The faucet sputtered before the water came out brown, then clear. He needed to call the landlord again. Add it to the list. That night, after the kids were asleep, Axel sat at the kitchen table with a stack of bills spread out in front of him like evidence of his failure. Rent was due in 6 days. The electricity bill had a red notice stamped across the top. Car insurance, groceries. Maya needed new shoes because she'd been wearing the same pair for 8 months and the soles were coming apart. He did the math 3 times, hoping the numbers would change. They didn't. His phone buzzed. A text from his brother-in-law Marcus. "You still thinking about that auction tomorrow?" Axel had almost forgotten. Last week, over beers, Marcus couldn't really afford to buy and Axel couldn't really afford to drink. They'd talked about the estate auction happening on the old Harrington property. The mansion had been sitting vacant for 40 years, ever since the reclusive billionaire Vincent Harrington died under circumstances the town still whispered about. "Heard it might go cheap," Marcus had said. "No one wants to touch it. Place has a reputation." Axel had laughed it off then. He couldn't afford a house. He could barely afford Hamburger Helper. But now, staring at the bills, at the cramped apartment, at the couch where he'd wake up with a stiff neck in 6 hours, something shifted. He texted back, "What time?" The auction was held at 10 o'clock Wednesday morning in the courthouse basement. Axel had to take a half-day off work, which meant losing money he didn't have, but something pulled him there anyway. Maybe desperation, maybe hope, Maybe he'd finally cracked under the weight of it all. The room smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Folding chairs were arranged in crooked rows. Maybe 15 people showed up, most of them looking like they'd wandered in by accident. Axel took a seat in the back. The auctioneer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a voice like gravel, stood at a podium shuffling papers. Beside him, a woman in a navy blazer held a clipboard and looked profoundly bored. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced. The Harrington Estate, 42,000 square feet, sits on 18 acres, built in 1873, Victorian architecture, needs substantial renovation. He paused. Property has been vacant since 1983, sold as is, no warranties, no inspections. Buyer assumes all risk. A murmur rippled through the room. Axel leaned forward. The auctioneer cleared his throat. We'll start the bidding at $500,000. Silence. 400,000? Nothing. Axel's heart started to pound. 200,000? A man in the third row coughed. Someone's phone rang. No one moved. The auctioneer looked frustrated. $100,000 to open. Still nothing. 50,000. The silence felt heavy now, oppressive. 25,000. Axel's hands were sweating. $10,000. Surely someone... 8,000, Axel heard himself say. Every head in the room turned. The auctioneer blinked. I'm sorry? $8,000, Axel repeated, louder this time. The man in the navy blazer whispered something to the woman with the clipboard. She shrugged. We have 8,000, the auctioneer said slowly. Do I hear 9? The room stayed quiet. Going once at $8,000? Axel couldn't breathe. Going twice. This was insane. This was the stupidest thing he'd ever done. Sold for $8,000 to bidder 73. The gavel came down like a gunshot. Axel sat frozen in his chair while his heart tried to climb out of his chest. Around him, people were standing, gathering their things, whispering as they glanced his way. He caught fragments of conversation. Doesn't know what he just bought. Place is cursed, everyone knows. Vincent Harrington died in there, and they never found out why. The woman with the clipboard approached him, her heels clicking against the linoleum. She handed him a stack of papers without smiling. Congratulations, she said in a tone that suggested the opposite. You'll need to sign here, here, and initial here. Payment is due within 72 hours. Cashier's check or wire transfer only. Axel took the pen with shaking hands. You know what you're getting into? She asked quietly. A house, he said. She almost smiled. Sure, a house. 20 minutes later, Axel sat in his truck in the courthouse parking lot, staring at the deed in his hands. His name was on it now, printed in official-looking font above a legal description of the property that took up half a page. He'd just spent his entire savings, the emergency fund he'd been building since Emma died, the money that was supposed to keep them afloat when the next disaster hit. And he'd spent it on a house no one else wanted. His phone rang. Marcus. Please tell me you didn't actually bid on that place. Axel didn't answer. Axel, please. I got it for 8,000. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You're out of your mind. Probably. You know the stories about that house, right? Vincent Harrington was paranoid, recluse. They found him dead in the library, and no one could figure out why. Some people think... I don't care what people think, Axel interrupted. I care that my kids are sleeping 3 to a bedroom in an apartment with black mold growing in the bathroom. I care that Maya is 12 years old and acting like she's 30 because I can't hold it together. I care that we're 1 bad month away from losing everything. Marcus sighed. When can I see it? This weekend. I pick up the keys Friday. That night, Axel told the kids over dinner. Spaghetti with jarred sauce, the cheapest kind, stretched with extra noodles. We're moving, he said. Maya looked up sharply. What? I bought a house. Carter's eyes went wide. A real house? With a yard? with a big yard and a lot of rooms, enough for everyone to have their own space. Sophie clapped her hands. Can I have a pink room? You can have whatever color you want, sweetheart. Maya was quiet, studying him with those eyes that were too much like Emma's. Where is it? The old Harrington place, out on Ridgewood Road. Her expression changed. The haunted mansion? It's not haunted. Everyone says it is. They say the old guy who lived there went crazy and died, and no one's been inside since. Then everyone is wrong. It's just an old house that needs some work. Dad. Maya put her fork down. How much did it cost? Axel hesitated. That's not important. How much? $8,000. She stared at him. That's all our savings. Maya, what if something goes wrong? What if you get hurt at work or the truck breaks down or... Then we figure it out, like we always do. Tears welled in her eyes. Mum wouldn't want you to risk everything on some stupid house. The words hit harder than she probably meant them to. Axel reached across the table and took her hand. Your mom, he said quietly, wanted you guys to have a home. A real home. Not some apartment where the rent goes up every year and the landlord won't fix anything. She wanted you to have stability. And I know this seems crazy, but I'm trying to give you that. Maya pulled her hand away and stood up. I'm not hungry anymore. She left the table. A moment later, her bedroom door closed with a soft click. Carter looked down at his plate. Sophie had stopped clapping. It's going to be okay, Axel said, not sure if he was trying to convince them or himself. Friday afternoon, Axel stood in front of the Harrington mansion for the first time as its owner. The real estate agent, a woman named Patricia with silver hair and tired eyes, handed him an old iron key. Good luck, she said. That's it? No walkthrough? Honey, I'm not setting foot in there. I've lived in this town 48 years and I know better. She got back in her car, then paused. One piece of advice. Whatever you find in there, be careful who you tell. Before he could ask what she meant, she drove away. Axel turned to face the house. It was massive. 3 stories of weathered stone and dark wood, with towers on each corner and windows that stared down like empty eyes. The grounds were overgrown, decades of neglect turning what must have once been manicured gardens into a jungle of wild roses and creeping vines. He walked up the front steps. They groaned under his weight but held. The key turned smoothly in the lock like it had been waiting. The door swung open. Inside, the air was cool and still, untouched by time. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light coming through gaps in the boarded windows. The foyer was grand, all marble floors and a sweeping staircase that curved up to the second floor. A chandelier hung overhead, crystals dulled by decades of dust but still intact. Furniture sat under white sheets like sleeping ghosts. Axel took a step inside and the floor creaked. He spent the next hour exploring, moving room by room with growing wonder and dread. The place was enormous. The first floor alone had a library, a dining room that could seat 20, a kitchen with appliances from the 1950s, a sunroom, a parlor, and at least 3 other rooms he couldn't identify. The second floor had 8 bedrooms, each one bigger than his entire apartment. The third floor was mostly storage and what looked like servants' quarters, but it was the condition that stunned him. Yes, everything was covered in dust. Yes, the wallpaper was peeling in places and some of the windows were cracked. Yes, it would take months of work to make it livable, but the bones were solid. The structure was sound, and more importantly, it was theirs. He found the library on the first floor, exactly where the rumors said Vincent Harrington had died. It was a circular room lined floor to ceiling with books, many of them leather-bound and ancient-looking. A massive desk sat in the center, papers still scattered across its surface as if someone had just stepped away. Axel approached carefully. The papers were letters, financial documents, personal correspondence. He picked up one dated July 7th, 1983, the day before Vincent Harrington died. It was written in shaky handwriting. To whoever finds this, if you are reading these words, then I am gone and you are here. Perhaps that is as it should be. I built this house to be a fortress, a place where I could protect what mattered most. But fortresses become prisons when you live in them alone. I have no family, no heirs, no one to pass this burden to. But I do have hope. Hope that whoever comes next will understand what I could not. That wealth without purpose is simply weight. That protection without trust is simply isolation. The East Wing holds the truth of my life's work. I sealed it away from those who would misuse it. But I left the key for someone worthy to find. If you need it, truly need it, then perhaps you deserve it more than I ever did. Protect what matters most. Vincent Harrington. Axel read the letter 3 times, his hands trembling. The East Wing. He'd noticed it during his walkthrough, a section of the house completely separate from the main structure, connected by a long hallway. But the entrance was sealed with a heavy steel door and industrial padlocks. He folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his pocket. Moving day came on a Saturday. Marcus showed up with his pickup truck and 2 teenagers he'd bribed with pizza money. The kids stood on the mansion's front steps, Maya with her arms crossed, Carter bouncing with excitement, Sophie twirling in circles. "It's like a castle," Sophie breathed. "It's like a horror movie," Maya muttered. They spent the day hauling their meager belongings inside. It was almost embarrassing how little they had. Everything they owned fit in 2 truckloads. In a house with 42,000 square feet, their furniture looked like toys scattered in an empty warehouse. But the kids didn't seem to mind. Carter claimed a bedroom on the 2nd floor with windows overlooking the overgrown gardens. Sophie picked the room next to it because it had purple wallpaper, close enough to pink. Maya took the smallest bedroom, the one at the end of the hall, as far from everyone as she could get. Axel didn't take a bedroom. Not yet. He'd sleep on the couch they'd brought from the apartment until he figured out which room felt right. That night, after Marcus left and the kids were asleep, Axel walked the halls alone with a flashlight. The mansion settled around him, wood creaking, old pipes groaning, the sound of a house remembering how to be lived in. He found himself drawn back to the library, to the desk where Vincent Harrington had written his final words. He started searching. It took 20 minutes to find it. A false bottom in the desk's bottom drawer revealed when he pressed a small brass button hidden beneath the drawer's lip. The bottom panel popped up, and inside was a single iron key. It was old, heavy, with an ornate head that matched the architectural style of the house. Axel held it up to the flashlight and smiled. The East Wing. He should wait until morning. He should bring Marcus. He should think this through. But he was already moving, already walking through the dark hallways toward the sealed door, already feeling the key grow warm in his palm like it recognized him. The hallway leading to the East Wing was different from the rest of the house. The walls were bare stone, the floor polished concrete. It felt less like a mansion and more like a vault. At the end stood the steel door, 3 padlocks hung from heavy brackets. Above them, a single keyhole. Axel inserted the key and turned. The locks released with metallic clicks that echoed down the hallway. The door swung inward on well-oiled hinges, revealing darkness beyond. He stepped inside and motion sensors triggered, flooding the space with soft LED light. What he saw stole the breath from his lungs. This wasn't part of a 140-year-old mansion. This was something else entirely. The hallway ahead was modern, climate-controlled, with recessed lighting and pristine white walls. It stretched 50 feet before ending at another door. Axel walked forward slowly, heart pounding. The second door wasn't locked. It opened into a massive apartment spanning what must have been the entire East Wing. The space was immaculate, untouched, preserved like a museum exhibit of a life lived in secret. Expensive furniture arranged in a modern living room, a kitchen with stainless steel appliances that looked brand new, original artwork on the walls, pieces that Axel recognized from Emma's art history books. But it was what lay beyond that made his legs weak. A hallway branched off from the main living space, doors on either side. Axel opened the first one. The room was maybe 20 feet by 20 feet, and every inch of it was stacked with cash. Bills organized in neat bundles, sorted by denomination, wrapped in bank bands. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions, just sitting there like it was waiting for someone to claim it. His hands shook as he picked up a stack of $100 bills. They felt real. They looked real. He dropped the stack and stumbled backward into the hallway. The second room held more. Cash, but also gold bars stacked like bricks, each one stamped with purity marks and serial numbers. Jewelry boxes filled with diamonds, emeralds, watches that cost more than cars. The third room was smaller but somehow more valuable. Safety deposit boxes lined the walls, most of them open, revealing rare coins, bearer bonds, stock certificates, and documents he couldn't begin to understand. Axel braced himself against the doorframe, breathing hard. The fourth room was different. It was an office, clean and organized. A desk with a computer that still hummed quietly, powered by backup generators that must have been running for decades. Filing cabinets lined one wall. A large safe stood open in the corner. Axel approached the desk on shaking legs. Papers were laid out in careful order, an inventory list, handwritten, meticulous. His eyes scanned down the page. Cash on hand, $47,200,000. Gold reserves, $18 million. Current market value. Precious stones and jewelry, $32 million estimated. Bearer instruments, $95 million face value. Real estate holdings, $74 million. Fine art and collectibles, $31 million. Total estimated net worth, $297 million. At the bottom, a note in the same shaky handwriting from the library. To the next owner of this house, this is my life's work. I earned it honestly through decades of careful investment. I protected it fiercely because I trusted no one. I sealed it away because I had no one to leave it to. If you have found this room, then you own this property. And if you own this property, then by the terms of my will, sealed and notarized, everything in this wing belongs to you. I ask only one thing. Use it better than I did. Do not let wealth make you afraid. Do not let money make you alone. Protect what matters most, and what matters most is never the fortune itself. Vincent Harrington, July 7th, 1983. Axel collapsed into the desk chair and put his head in his hands. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. He was a carpenter from a nowhere town who could barely afford groceries, sitting in a secret vault containing $300 million that apparently now belonged to him. He wanted to laugh. He wanted to cry. He wanted to run upstairs and wake his kids and tell them everything was going to be okay, that they'd never have to worry again, that Maya could stop carrying the world on her 12-year-old shoulders. But he also wanted to lock this door and pretend he'd never found it, because money like this didn't just solve problems. It created them. Axel sat in that chair for 2 hours, reading through Vincent Harrington's files, trying to understand how a man could accumulate a fortune this size and then seal it away to gather dust. The documents told a story of brilliance and paranoia, of a man who'd made his first million in the stock market crash of 1929 by betting against everyone else, who'd bought real estate when no one wanted it and sold when everyone did, who'd invested in technologies before they had names. But they also told a story of isolation. Letters from distant relatives asking for help, all marked "no response sent." Invitations to charity galas declined. Offers of friendship ignored. Vincent Harrington had chosen his fortune over everything else, and in the end he died alone in a library, surrounded by books instead of people. Axel thought about Emma, about the last conversation they'd had before the morphine took her too far away for words. She'd gripped his hand with what little strength she had left and whispered, "Don't let the kids forget how to hope." He'd promised her they wouldn't. And now here he sat, in a room filled with more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, and all he could think about was whether this would give his children hope or teach them that the world was something that could be bought. Finally, as midnight approached, he stood. He took careful photos of every room, every document, every piece of evidence. Then he locked the east wing behind him and returned to the main house. Maya was standing at the top of the stairs. "Dad!" He nearly jumped out of his skin. "Maya, what are you doing up?" "I heard you walking around." She came down the steps slowly, studying his face. "You look weird. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I was just exploring." "You're lying." She'd always been able to read him. Emma used to joke that Maya got his face but her lie detector. Axel sat down on the bottom step and Maya sat beside him. For a long moment, he didn't speak. "What if I told you," he finally said, "that something impossible just happened?" "Like what?" "Like finding something that changes everything." Maya pulled her knees to her chest. "Is it bad?" "I don't know yet." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Mum used to say that sometimes the scariest changes turn out to be the best ones. She said that about you losing your job right before Carter was born, and about moving to Harrington Falls, and about—" She stopped. "About getting sick," Axel finished quietly. "Yeah." They sat together in the darkness of their impossible mansion, a widowed father and his 2 wise daughter, both trying to figure out what came next. "Whatever it is," Maya said, "we'll handle it. We always do." Axel kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, we always do." The next morning brought Sunday sunshine and the kind of peace that felt too fragile to trust. Axel made pancakes in the enormous outdated kitchen while Carter and Sophie ran through the halls playing some elaborate game involving dragons and princesses. Maya sat at the kitchen island doing homework, glancing up occasionally to watch him with those careful eyes. He hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. His mind kept circling back to that room, to those numbers, to the weight of a decision he didn't know how to make. "Dad!" Carter appeared in the doorway, breathing hard from running. "Can we explore the gardens today? I think there's a fountain out there." "Maybe later, buddy." "And can we see what's behind that big metal door, the one down the hallway?" Axel nearly dropped the spatula. "What metal door?" "The one in that weird hallway. Sophie and I found it last night. It's got like 3 locks on it. What's back there?" Maya looked up sharply, reading the panic Axel was trying to hide. "Nothing," he said too quickly. "Just storage. Old furniture, probably. It's not safe." "But—" "Carter, I said no." His son's face fell. "Okay." After breakfast, after the kids scattered to their various corners of the massive house, Maya found him in the library. "You're going to tell me what's really going on," she said. It wasn't a question. Axel looked at his daughter, so much like her mother it hurt, and made a decision. "Sit down." He told her everything. The letter from Vincent Harrington, the key in the desk, the East Wing with its climate-controlled vault, the cash and gold and jewels, the documents proving it all belonged to whoever owned the property, the $300 million that was apparently now theirs. Maya listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from disbelief to shock to something Axel couldn't quite identify. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Can I see it?" she finally asked. Together, they walked through the house to the sealed hallway. Axel unlocked the steel door and led his daughter into Vincent Harrington's secret world. Maya walked through the rooms slowly, touching nothing, just absorbing the impossible reality of what surrounded them. When they reached the office and she saw the inventory list, she sank into the desk chair. $300 million, she whispered, "give or take." "Dad, this is—" She stopped, shook her head. "People kill for this kind of money." "I know. We can't tell anyone, not yet, not until we figure out what to do." Axel smiled despite himself. "When did you get so smart?" "I had a good teacher." She looked up at him. "What are we going to do?" "Honestly, I have no idea. They sat together in that office while morning light filtered through the reinforced windows high above, and for the first time since Emma died, Axel didn't feel completely alone in carrying the weight of their future. "We need help," Maya said. "Uncle Marcus, he's a lawyer, right?" "Yeah." "Then we start there. We figure out if this is really legal, if it's really ours, and then—" She paused, thinking. "Then we decide what kind of people we want to be." Axel pulled her into a hug. "I love you, kid." "I love you too, Dad. Even when you make completely insane decisions like buying haunted mansions." He laughed, and it felt good, felt real. They locked the east wing and returned to the main house to find Carter and Sophie covered in dirt from exploring the gardens. Sophie had found the fountain, just like Carter predicted, buried under decades of ivy and moss. "Can we fix it?" she asked, eyes shining. "Can we make it work again?" Axel looked at his children, at the crumbling mansion around them, at the impossible secret locked away in the east wing, and felt something shift inside his chest. "Yeah," he said. "We can fix it. We can fix all of it." That night, after the kids were finally asleep, Axel called Marcus. "I need to see you tomorrow. It's important." "Everything okay?" Axel looked around the grand foyer of his $8,000 mansion and almost laughed. "No," he said, "but it might be." Marcus arrived Monday afternoon, driving his decade-old Honda Civic up the winding driveway with the kind of caution that suggested he still wasn't sure this was real. Axel watched from the front steps as his brother-in-law parked and stepped out, staring up at the mansion with his mouth slightly open. "Holy hell," Marcus breathed. "You actually bought this place." "Told you I did." "Yeah, but I thought you meant like a cottage or something. This is a—" He gestured helplessly at the towering structure. "This is an estate." Axel smiled. "Wait until you see the inside." They walked through the main house first, Marcus stopping every few feet to point at architectural details, original woodwork, stained glass windows that probably cost more than his car. He ran his hands along the marble staircase banister like he was afraid it might disappear. "Axel, this place is incredible. I mean, it needs work, but the bones are solid. You could probably flip this for—" "I'm not flipping it. We're living here." "Right, yeah, of course." Marcus paused in the library, taking in the walls of books. "Is this where the old guy died?" "Yeah. Creepy. Only if you let it be." They stood in the circular room for a moment, dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. Then Axel pulled the letter from his pocket, the one Vincent Harrington had written the day before he died, and handed it to Marcus. His brother-in-law read it slowly, his expression shifting from curious to confused to completely stunned. "The East Wing holds the truth," Marcus read aloud. "What does that mean?" "Come with me." Axel led him through the house to the sealed hallway. Marcus's footsteps echoed against the bare stone walls as they approached the steel door. "This is different from the rest of the place," Marcus observed. "Yeah, built later, probably in the 70s or 80s based on the materials." Axel unlocked the door and led Marcus inside. The reaction was everything Axel expected. Marcus froze in the doorway of the first room, staring at the stacks of cash, his face going pale. "Is that real?" "Yes. How much is there?" "Keep walking." They moved through all 4 rooms, Marcus getting quieter with each one. By the time they reached the office and Axel showed him the inventory list, his brother-in-law had to sit down. $300 million, Marcus whispered. $297 million, give or take. "Axel," Marcus looked up at him, eyes wide. "Do you understand what this means?" "It means Vincent Harrington was paranoid and rich. It means you might legally own the biggest fortune ever found in this state." Marcus stood, started pacing. Okay. Let me think. You bought the property at auction, right? Clean title?" "As far as I know." "And this letter, this inventory, it's all documented, dated, notarized even." He picked up one of the legal documents from the desk. He set up a trust structure. Everything in this wing was designated to transfer with the property itself, not through probate. In English? Marcus laughed, slightly hysterical. In English, it means if the property is legally yours, which it is, then everything in here is legally yours too. Vincent Harrington structured it that way on purpose. Axel felt his knees go weak. Hearing it said out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. So what do? We document everything. Photographs, videos, inventory lists. We secure this place, get better locks, maybe a safe, and we don't tell anyone until we have every legal protection in place. Marcus turned to him. Axel, people have killed for a lot less than $300 million. You need to be smart about this. I know. Do the kids know? Maya does. I told her yesterday. She's the one who said we should call you. Marcus smiled. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. They spent the rest of the afternoon documenting everything, Marcus taking photos with his phone while Axel made detailed notes. By the time the sun started setting, they had a rough inventory and a plan. First thing tomorrow, I'm going to pull the deed, the auction records, everything related to the sale, Marcus said as they locked the east wing behind them. I'll also research Vincent Harrington's estate, see if there were any challenges to his will, any living relatives who might have a claim. And if there are, then we lawyer up and fight. But Axel, I need you to understand something. Once word gets out about this, your life is going to change. People are going to come out of nowhere claiming connections to Vincent, to the property, to you. Reporters are going to camp on your lawn. The IRS is going to want answers. It's going to get messy. Axel thought about his kids sleeping upstairs, about Maya's warning that people killed for this kind of money. Then we keep it quiet as long as we can. Marcus nodded. I'll start the research this week. In the meantime, act normal, fix up the house, live your life, and for God's sake, don't spend any of that money yet. Wasn't planning on it. After Marcus left, Axel found Maya in the library doing homework. She looked up when he entered, question in her eyes. Uncle Marcus thinks it's real, Axel said, thinks it's legally ours. Maya closed her textbook. What do we do now? We wait. We're careful. And we don't tell Carter and Sophie yet. They're going to figure it out eventually. I know, but let them be kids a little longer. She nodded slowly. Dad, are you scared? He sat down beside her. Terrified. Me too. They sat together in the fading light, surrounded by books that had witnessed Vincent Harrington's lonely death, and tried to imagine a future that didn't end the same way. The first week passed quietly, too quietly. Axel went back to work on job sites, came home covered in sawdust and paint, spent his evenings helping the kids with homework and exploring the mansion room by room. They found hidden closets and servant staircases, a wine cellar that still held dusty bottles, a ballroom on the third floor with floors so warped they'd need replacing. It felt normal, almost, but Axel couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It started small. A car parked across the street that hadn't been there before. The same man walking past the property 3 days in a row with a dog that never seemed to need walking. A woman in a business suit taking photos of the house from the sidewalk. He told himself he was being paranoid. Then, on Thursday night, someone tried the front door. Axel woke to the sound of metal scraping against metal, the distinct noise of someone working a lock. He grabbed his phone and a baseball bat from the closet, crept downstairs in the darkness. The front door was still closed, still locked. But through the stained glass panels, he could see a shadow moving on the porch. He flipped on the exterior lights. The shadow disappeared. Footsteps running down the driveway. A car starting somewhere down the street. Axel's hands shook as he checked every lock, every window, every entrance. Nothing was broken. Nothing was taken. But someone had been there. Someone knew. In the morning, he called Marcus. Someone tried to break in last night. Did you call the police? And tell them what? That someone jiggled my doorknob? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I found something. About Vincent Harrington's estate. There was a legal challenge in 1984, the year after he died. A group of distant cousins tried to claim inheritance rights. What happened? The challenge was dismissed. Harrington's will was airtight. But Axel, here's the thing. The lawyer who represented those cousins is still practicing. His name is Richard Sullivan, and according to my contacts, he's been asking questions about the property sale. Axel felt ice in his stomach. What kind of questions? Who bought it? What condition it's in? Whether the new owner has accessed all areas of the house? He knows. Maybe, or maybe he's just fishing. Either way, you need to be ready. I'm coming over this weekend with a security system. Cameras, motion sensors, the works. That afternoon, Axel picked up the kids from school and noticed a black sedan following them. It stayed 3 cars back, never getting close enough for him to see the driver's face, but it was there. He took 4 random turns, drove in a circle, pulled into a gas station. The sedan drove past without stopping. Maybe he was paranoid. Maybe he was losing his mind. Maya noticed his tension when they got home. Dad, what's wrong? Nothing. You're lying again. He looked at his daughter, at her 2 old eyes in her 12-year-old face, and made a decision. I think people know about the East Wing. Her expression went cold. How? I don't know. But someone tried to break in last night, and a lawyer who represented Vincent Harrington's relatives is asking questions about us. We need to protect it. Marcus is bringing a security system this weekend. That's not enough. Maya pulled out her phone, started typing. We need to move the most valuable stuff, hide it better. If someone breaks in, they can't find everything in one place. Maya, Dad, think about it. Right now it's all sitting in 4 rooms like a treasure chest waiting to be opened. We need to be smarter. She was right. Of course she was right. That night, after Carter and Sophie went to bed, Axel and Maya worked in the East Wing. They moved cash to different locations throughout the mansion, hiding it in walls, under floorboards, inside furniture. The gold bars went into the wine cellar behind false brick panels. The jewelry and bearer bonds, they locked in a safe they found in Vincent Harrington's bedroom. It took hours. By the time they finished, both of them were exhausted and filthy. Mom would be proud of you, Axel said as they locked the East Wing. Maya smiled sadly. I don't know, she always wanted me to be a kid, not... She gestured at herself, at the dust and sweat and weight she carried. This. You are a kid. You're just a really capable one. That's the problem, though, isn't it? I got so used to taking care of everyone that I forgot how to need taking care of. Axel pulled her into a hug. I'm sorry. For what? For making you grow up too fast. She hugged him back. You didn't make me. Cancer did. They stood together in the hallway outside the sealed wing, father and daughter, both carrying burdens too heavy for their frames. Saturday morning brought Marcus and a van full of security equipment. He spent all day installing cameras at every entrance, motion sensors in the hallways, and a sophisticated alarm system that connected to his phone and Axel's. If anyone so much as breathes on this property, we'll know, Marcus said. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still don't know what we're dealing with. He didn't have to wait long to find out. Monday afternoon, while Axel was at work and the kids were at school, a man knocked on the door. The security camera caught him perfectly. Late 50s, expensive suit, briefcase in hand. Axel's phone buzzed with the alert. He watched the live feed as the man knocked again, then left a business card wedged in the doorframe. When Axel got home, he retrieved the card. Richard Sullivan, attorney at law, estate litigation specialist. His hands shook as he called Marcus. He came to the house. Don't talk to him, don't answer if he calls. Let me handle this. But Richard Sullivan wasn't easy to avoid. He called Axel's phone that evening, called again the next morning, left voicemails that were professional but insistent. "Mr. Morrison, my name is Richard Sullivan. I represent parties with a legal interest in the property you recently purchased. It's imperative we speak regarding assets that may have been improperly included in the sale. Please call me at your earliest convenience." Axel didn't call back. 2 days later, Sullivan showed up at the job site where Axel was working. "Mr. Morrison, I apologize for the intrusion, but you haven't returned my calls." Axel climbed down from the ladder, wiping his hands on his jeans. The other workers had stopped to watch. "I'm working." "I can see that. This will only take a moment." Sullivan pulled papers from his briefcase. "I represent the surviving relatives of Vincent Harrington. They believe certain assets within the property you purchased were not legally transferable through the real estate sale. The property and everything in it was sold as is. I have the deed." "Yes, well, that's where things get complicated. You see, Vincent Harrington's will specified that his personal fortune, distinct from the real estate itself, was to be held in trust for potential heirs. My clients believe that fortune is still located on the property." Axel kept his expression neutral. "I bought an old house, that's it." Sullivan smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Morrison, let me be direct. My clients know about the East Wing. They know Vincent Harrington sealed away a substantial portion of his wealth, and they know that by purchasing the property, you now have access to it." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then you won't mind allowing us to conduct a survey of the property, just to verify that certain secured areas remain undisturbed." "Get off my job site." Sullivan's smile faded. "This doesn't have to be adversarial. My clients are prepared to negotiate, to offer you a finder's fee in exchange for—" "I said get off my job site now." The lawyer studied him for a long moment, then tucked his papers away. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Morrison. These people don't give up easily. Neither do I." He walked back to his car, a black sedan that Axel realized with a chill was the same one that had followed them from school. That night, Axel gathered Maya, Carter, and Sophie in the living room. It was time to tell them everything. Carter listened with wide eyes, interrupting every few sentences with questions. Sophie mostly seemed excited about the idea of hidden treasure, but Maya sat quietly, already understanding what this meant. "So we're rich?" Carter asked. "Potentially, if it's legally ours." "Why wouldn't it be ours? We bought the house." "Because money makes people do bad things, buddy. And when there's this much money involved, people will fight for it." "Will they hurt us?" Sophie's voice was small. Axel pulled her into his lap. "No, sweetheart. I won't let anyone hurt you. But things are going to get complicated for a while. There might be lawyers and news reporters, people asking questions. I need you all to be careful about what you say." "We shouldn't tell our friends," Maya said. "Exactly. But what if someone asks why we moved here?" Carter wanted to know. "You tell them the truth. We bought an old house because we needed more space. That's it." They spent the evening talking through scenarios, practicing what to say if reporters showed up, making a plan. By the time the kids went to bed, Axel felt slightly better about their chances. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice, distorted, mechanical. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." Axel's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "Walk away, sell the property, leave town, or things get bad for your family." The line went dead. He called Marcus immediately. "They threatened the kids." "What? Who?" "I don't know. The voice was disguised. They told me to walk away or things get bad for my family." Marcus swore. Okay, we need to take this to the police." "And tell them what? That someone made a vague threat over the phone?" "It's better than nothing." "No, it's not. It tips our hand. It makes this public. And the second this goes public, we lose control of the narrative. Axel, they threatened your children. I know, his voice cracked. I know, Marcus, but going to the police right now just escalates things. We need to be smart. Then what do you want to do? Axel looked around the mansion, at the fortress Vincent Harrington had built to protect his fortune, the same fortress that had eventually become his prison. We fight, but we do it smart. We document everything, we build our legal case, and we make damn sure that when this goes public, we control how it happens. What happens next will test everything Axel thought he knew about right and wrong, and force him to make a choice that will change his children's lives forever. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. The threats didn't stop. They escalated. Anonymous letters started arriving, stuffed in the mailbox, slipped under the door, even taped to the windshield of Axel's truck. Some were crude, handwritten notes promising violence. Others were more sophisticated, printed on expensive paper, outlining legal consequences if he didn't cooperate. Marcus documented everything, photographed every letter, logged every phone call, built a file that was growing thicker by the day. We have enough for a restraining order, he said one evening, sitting in Axel's kitchen while the kids did homework upstairs. Against who? We don't know who's doing this. We know Richard Sullivan is involved. These letters mention the same things he did: the East Wing, the fortune, the supposed claim his clients have. Axel rubbed his face. He hadn't slept more than 4 hours in a week. If we file for a restraining order, it becomes public record. Reporters will find it. This whole thing blows up. It's going to blow up eventually anyway. I know, but not yet, not until we're ready. He wasn't sure when they'd ever be ready. The next violation came on a Tuesday. Axel arrived home from work to find the back door jimmied open, the lock broken. His heart stopped. He ran inside, calling for the kids. They were fine. Maya had taken them to the library for homework help, but someone had been in the house. The main floor looked untouched, nothing obviously stolen or moved. But when Axel checked the security footage, his blood ran cold. 3 men, wearing masks and gloves, had entered through the back. They'd moved through the house systematically, checking walls, tapping on floors, searching for the hidden wealth they knew was there. They'd tried the steel door to the East Wing. The lock had held. Barely. Axel called the police this time. He didn't have a choice. 2 officers showed up, took a report, looked around with bored expressions. One of them recognized the address. This is the old Harrington place, right? You're the guy who bought it for nothing at auction. $8,000 isn't nothing. The officer smirked. Compared to what it's worth, yeah, it is. You planning to flip it? I'm planning to live here with my kids. Huh. The officer made some notes. Well, probably just vandals. Old place like this, people think it's abandoned. I'd get better locks if I were you. They left without dusting for prints or taking the security footage seriously. They didn't care, Maya said, watching from the stairs. No, they didn't. Because we're nobody. Just some poor family living in a rich man's house. Axel looked at his daughter, at the cynicism that had no place in someone her age. We're not nobody. Tell that to them. She was right, though. Without proof of the fortune, without going public with what they'd found, they were just another break-in statistic in a town that barely had a police force. That night, Axel reinforced the East Wing door with additional locks, steel bars, and a separate alarm system. Marcus helped, neither of them speaking much, both understanding that they were running out of time. You need to make a decision, Marcus finally said. Either we go public with this, file the proper legal claims, protect yourselves with the law, or we keep it secret and accept that you're sitting ducks. If we go public, every con artist and crook in the country shows up at our door. If we don't, the ones who already know might do worse than break in. Axel didn't have an answer. The decision was made for him 3 days later. He was at work when Maya called. her voice shaking. "Dad, there's reporters outside." "What?" "News vans, like 3 of them. They're asking if we found something in the house." Axel's stomach dropped. "Don't talk to them. Don't let Carter or Sophie talk to them. Lock the doors and wait for me." He left the job site without explanation, drove home doing 70 in a 45 zone. When he turned onto his street, he saw them. News vans from local stations, reporters with cameras, people with notepads crowding the front lawn. He pushed through them without comment, ignoring the questions they shouted. "Mr. Morrison, is it true you found a fortune in the mansion? How much money are we talking about? Did you know about it when you bought the property?" Inside, the kids were huddled in the living room. Maya had her arms around Carter and Sophie, both of whom looked terrified. "How did they find out?" Maya demanded. "I don't know." But he had a pretty good idea. Richard Sullivan and his clients had gone to the media, leaked the story to force Axel's hand. His phone rang. "Marcus, I'm seeing the news. Axel, they're saying you found hundreds of millions in the house." "Where are they getting their information?" "Anonymous sources, probably Sullivan's people. But it doesn't matter now. The story's out. You need to make a statement." "Saying what?" "The truth, or at least enough of it to control the narrative." Axel looked at his kids, at their frightened faces, and felt rage building in his chest. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were supposed to have time, space, the ability to figure things out privately. Instead, they were under siege. He called the only person he could think of who might help. Dorothy, the elderly woman who'd warned him about the property the day he moved in. She'd lived in Harrington Falls her whole life. If anyone knew how to navigate this, it was her. She answered on the second ring. "I saw the news," she said before he could speak. "Reporters calling me asking about Vincent, about the house, about you." "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. But Axel, you need to understand something. Vincent Harrington spent 40 years hiding his fortune from people exactly like this, and in the end, it killed him." "What do you mean?" "The official story is he died of a heart attack. But there were always questions. Wounds on his body that didn't make sense. Signs of a struggle. The police ruled it natural causes, but some of us never believed it." Axel felt sick. "You think someone killed him for the money?" "I think people knew he had a fortune. I think they tried to make him tell them where it was, and I think he died protecting it." "Jesus. Which means you need to be smarter than he was. You can't hide this anymore. The only way to protect your family is to bring it into the light." She was right. He knew she was right. That evening, against every instinct screaming at him to stay silent, Axel walked out onto his front porch and faced the cameras. The reporters surged forward, microphones extended, questions overlapping into noise. He held up his hand. "I'll make a statement. Then I'm going back inside to my kids, and you're going to leave us alone." The crowd quieted. "My name is Axel Morrison. 6 weeks ago, I bought this property at a county auction for $8,000. It was a legal sale. I have the deed. When I moved in with my 3 children, I discovered that the previous owner, Vincent Harrington, had sealed away a portion of his wealth in a secure wing of the house." Camera flashes exploded. "The fortune is real. I've documented everything. I've consulted with attorneys. And according to every legal expert I've spoken to, Vincent Harrington's will and trust documents specify that everything in this house transfers with the property itself, which means it's legally mine." "How much money are we talking about?" someone shouted. "I'm not disclosing specific amounts at this time." "What are you going to do with it?" Axel looked directly into the nearest camera. "I'm going to protect my family, and I'm going to honor the spirit of Vincent Harrington's final wishes. He wanted this fortune to go to someone who needed it, someone who would use it for good. My wife died 2 years ago. I've been raising 3 kids on a carpenter's salary. We've struggled every single day. This money could change our lives. But more than that, it could change lives in this community. Are you saying you'll give it away? I'm saying I'm going to be thoughtful about it. I'm not going to make stupid decisions, and I'm not going to let people intimidate me into walking away from what's legally mine. There are reports that relatives of Vincent Harrington are challenging your claim. Let them challenge it. I've done nothing wrong. I bought a property. I found something valuable, and I'm going to fight for my family's future. He turned and walked back inside without taking questions. The reporters stayed for another hour, filming the house, interviewing neighbors, spinning the story every which way. But Axel had done what he needed to do. He'd controlled the narrative. He'd put his stake in the ground. Now came the hard part, living with the consequences. That night, Axel's phone exploded with calls. Reporters wanting interviews, lawyers offering to represent him, financial advisors promising to help manage the fortune, distant relatives he'd never heard of suddenly reaching out. He ignored them all except one. A text from an unknown number. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." He showed it to Marcus, who'd come over after the news conference. "We're filing police reports for all of this. The threats, the break-in, everything. It won't matter. You heard the cops. They don't care. They'll care now that it's public. You're not just some random guy anymore. You're the man who found $300 million. That makes you news. That makes the threats news." Marcus was right. By morning, 2 detectives showed up at the house asking about the break-in, the threatening calls, the anonymous letters. They took everything seriously now that cameras were involved. But it didn't make Axel feel safer. If anything, he felt more exposed than ever. The legal challenges began immediately. Richard Sullivan filed a motion claiming that Vincent Harrington's fortune was held in a separate trust that didn't transfer with the real estate. He demanded the court freeze any assets found on the property pending litigation. Marcus filed counter-motions, arguing that Harrington's will was explicit and that all attempts to challenge it had been dismissed decades ago. The local paper ran daily stories. National news picked it up. Within a week, Axel Morrison and his 3 kids were known across the country as the family who'd won the lottery by buying a haunted mansion. Offers poured in. A publisher wanted to buy the rights to their story. A producer wanted to make a documentary. Companies offered security services, financial planning, legal representation, and through it all, the threats continued. Someone spray-painted "Thief" on the side of Axel's truck. Rocks were thrown through windows. Sophie started having nightmares about bad men coming to take them away. Carter got into a fight at school when another kid said his dad was a liar. And Maya stopped sleeping altogether. Axel would find her at 2 in the morning sitting by the window, watching the street, making sure no one was coming. "We should leave," she said one night. "Just pack up and go somewhere they can't find us." "We're not running." "Why not? What's the point of all this money if it makes us miserable?" Axel didn't have a good answer. The custody evaluation came as a complete surprise. Child Protective Services showed up unannounced, responding to an anonymous complaint that Axel was putting his children in danger by staying in the house. A social worker spent 3 hours interviewing the kids separately, inspecting the house, asking questions about their safety and well-being. "Someone called this in," the social worker explained. "Said the children were being exposed to threats and violence." "We've reported all the threats to police," Axel said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I can see that, and I can also see that you've chosen to stay in a situation that's clearly escalated." She looked at her notes. "Mr. Morrison, I'm not here to take your kids, but I am here to assess whether this environment is safe for them. It's our home." "It's a target." He couldn't argue with that. After the social worker left, promising to file her report within a week, Axel sat in the library with his head in his hands. Everything was falling apart. He'd thought finding the fortune would solve their problems. Instead, it had created new ones he never imagined. They had money but couldn't spend it. They had security but didn't feel safe. They had a home but were under constant siege. Maya found him there an hour later. "Dad!" He looked up, trying to hide the tears on his face. "We're going to lose, aren't we?" "No." He pulled her close. "No, we're not going to lose. We're going to fight, and we're going to win, because that's what Mum would want. She'd want us to stand up for ourselves, to not back down when things get hard. But what if standing up for ourselves puts us in danger? Then we stand up anyway, because the alternative is letting bullies and liars take what's rightfully ours. And I won't do that. I won't teach you that backing down is the right choice when you've done nothing wrong." Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I miss when life was simple." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, the judge issued a temporary order freezing any assets found on the property. Axel couldn't spend a dime of Vincent Harrington's fortune until the legal questions were resolved, which meant they were back to living on his carpenter's salary, except now with a mansion to maintain and security bills piling up. Marcus tried to stay positive. "The law is on our side. Harrington's will is clear. The trust documents are notarized and filed. There's no legitimate legal challenge here. Sullivan is just fishing, hoping you'll settle to make it go away." "What if he's right, though? What if we go through all this and lose anyway?" "You won't, I promise you won't." But Marcus couldn't promise that. No one could. As the hearing date approached, the media frenzy intensified. Reporters dug into Axel's past, interviewed his former employers, tracked down distant relatives for comment. They interviewed Vincent Harrington's few remaining associates, trying to piece together why he'd hidden such a fortune. And slowly a narrative emerged. Vincent Harrington hadn't just been paranoid. He'd been right to be afraid. Evidence surfaced of multiple attempts to con him, to befriend him, to manipulate him into revealing where his fortune was hidden. Business partners who'd stolen from him, family members who'd sued him, even an attempted kidnapping in 1976 that was hushed up by paying off the perpetrators. The man had spent his final years in that mansion, alone, trusting no one, protecting his wealth with every resource at his disposal. And now that same paranoia was being visited on Axel and his children. The night before the hearing, Axel couldn't sleep. He walked the halls of the mansion, this impossible building that had somehow become their home, and wondered if Vincent Harrington's ghost watched him. Wondered if the old man approved or regretted leaving his burden to whoever came next. In the library, he found the spot where Harrington had died. There was no marker, no indication that a man had breathed his last breath there. Just books and dust and silence. "I don't know if you can hear me," Axel said to the empty room. "But if you can, I need you to know I'm trying to protect what you left behind, trying to do right by my family, trying not to let the money turn me into what it turned you into." The house creaked around him, settling into the night. "I hope I'm making you proud." No answer came, but Axel hadn't expected one. He just hoped that when the judge made his ruling tomorrow, it would be enough to finally give his family the security they deserved, or at least the chance to try. The courtroom was smaller than Axel expected. He'd imagined something grand, imposing, like the courtrooms on television. Instead, it was a modest room in the county courthouse with fluorescent lights that buzzed and wooden benches that creaked when you sat down. But it was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Curious townspeople squeezed in wherever they could find space. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but that didn't stop the artists from sketching everything with quick, practiced hands. Axel sat at the defendant's table with Marcus beside him. Across the aisle, Richard Sullivan sat with 3 other attorneys, all of them in expensive suits, all of them looking confident. Behind Sullivan sat an elderly couple Axel had never seen before. Vincent Harrington's second cousins, according to the legal briefs, people who'd never met the man in life but suddenly cared deeply about his legacy and death. The judge entered and everyone stood. Her name was Margaret Chen, and she had a reputation for being fair but ruthless. She'd been on the bench for 27 years and had no patience for games. "Be seated," she said, settling into her chair. "I've reviewed the briefs filed by both parties. Mr. Sullivan, you're claiming that your clients have rightful inheritance claims to assets found on the property purchased by Mr. Morrison. Is that correct?" Sullivan stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Vincent Harrington's will specified that his personal fortune was to be held in trust for potential heirs. The real estate and the fortune were meant to be separate entities. And yet the trust documents filed with the court tell a different story." Judge Chen held up a thick folder. "According to these documents, which were notarized and filed in 1982, Vincent Harrington explicitly stated that all assets contained within the residential structure known as Harrington Manor were to transfer with the property itself upon sale. Quote, "To ensure that whoever next inhabits this home receives not just shelter, but security." End quote. Sullivan's jaw tightened. "Your Honor, those documents were created during a period when Vincent Harrington was known to be suffering from paranoid delusions. Are you claiming he was mentally incompetent?" "I'm suggesting that his judgment was impaired." "Do you have medical evidence of this impairment?" "We have testimony from individuals who knew him during that period describing erratic behavior. Testimony from people who are now claiming they deserve his money. How convenient." Judge Chen set the folder down. "Mr. Marcus, your position?" Marcus stood, and Axel felt a surge of pride at how confident his brother-in-law looked. "Your Honor, Vincent Harrington was eccentric, yes, paranoid perhaps, but there's no evidence he was incompetent. He continued to manage complex investments until his death. He maintained detailed records. His trust documents were reviewed by multiple attorneys, and most importantly, there have been no successful challenges to his will in the 40-plus years since it was created. Except the one filed by these same cousins in 1984, Sullivan interjected. "Which was dismissed," Marcus shot back, "because the court found, and I quote from that ruling, Vincent Harrington's testamentary capacity is not in question. His wishes are clear and legally binding. Any attempt to circumvent those wishes based on familial connection rather than legal standing is without merit." Judge Chen nodded slowly. "I remember that case. Judge Williams was very clear." "Your Honor," Sullivan pressed, "we're not challenging the will itself. We're challenging the interpretation that physical assets hidden within a structure automatically transfer with real estate. Except that's exactly what the trust documents say they do. But there's a question of whether Mr. Morrison knew about these assets when he purchased the property. If he did, it could constitute fraud." "That's absurd," Marcus interrupted. "My client purchased the property at a public auction. He bid $8,000. No one else bid. There was no fraud, no deception, no—" "Enough," Judge Chen held up her hand. "Here's what I see. I see a man who bought a property legally. I see a previous owner who left detailed instructions about what should happen to his assets. And I see people who never cared about Vincent Harrington in life suddenly very interested in his money in death." The cousins shifted uncomfortably. "However," the judge continued, "given the substantial value involved and the unusual circumstances, I'm going to require additional verification. Mr. Morrison, you'll need to provide a complete inventory of everything found on the property. The court will appoint an independent appraiser to verify values, and we'll reconvene in 30 days to review those findings before I make a final ruling." Axel's heart sank. Another 30 days of uncertainty. "Your Honor," Sullivan stood again, "we request that all assets remain frozen until—" "Denied. Mr. Morrison is the legal owner of the property. While I appreciate your client's concerns, I'm not going to prevent a man from living in his own home." She looked directly at Axel. "However, Mr. Morrison, I'm ordering that no assets be sold, transferred, or substantially altered until this matter is resolved. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Good. We're adjourned." The gavel came down. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Axel pushed through them, Marcus running interference, both of them saying no comment over and over until they reached Marcus's car. "That could have gone worse," Marcus said as they drove away. "We still don't have a ruling." "No, but we have a judge who clearly thinks Sullivan's full of it. 30 days, Axel. We can handle 30 more days." But 30 days felt like an eternity. The media coverage intensified after the hearing. Every news outlet had an opinion about the case. Legal experts debated on television. Online forums exploded with theories and arguments. Some people called Axel a lucky everyman who deserved his windfall. Others called him an opportunist who'd manipulated a vulnerable sale. Death threats arrived daily now. The police installed a patrol car outside the house, rotating officers every 8 hours. It should have made Axel feel safer. Instead, it just reminded him how exposed they were. Maya stopped going to school. The other kids had made it impossible, whispering about her family's money, asking invasive questions, some of them cruel. The school counselor suggested homeschooling until things calmed down. Carter tried to tough it out but came home with a black eye after fighting a kid who called his dad a thief. Sophie refused to leave her room, spending hours drawing pictures of their old apartment, the place where life had been hard but at least predictable. "We're falling apart," Maya said one night, finding Axel in the library again. It had become his refuge, the room where Vincent Harrington had spent his final moments. "We're surviving." "Barely." She sat beside him. "Dad, is it worth it? All this money, all these problems. Is it really worth it?" He didn't answer right away, because honestly, he didn't know anymore. The independent appraiser arrived 2 weeks after the hearing. Her name was Dr. Elizabeth Park, and she had credentials that filled 2 pages. She'd appraised collections for museums, evaluated estates for the IRS, testified as an expert witness in dozens of cases. She spent 4 days in the East Wing, photographing everything, cataloguing every item, verifying authenticity, calculating values. She worked with quiet efficiency, occasionally asking Axel questions about where he'd found things or whether anything had been moved. "This is remarkable," she said on the 3rd day, examining a bearer bond from 1947. "These are incredibly rare. Most were cashed decades ago." Vincent Harrington seemed to collect rare things. He collected strategically. This isn't a hoarder's pile. This is a carefully curated portfolio designed to maintain value across economic conditions. She made a note. "Your previous owner was extremely intelligent and extremely alone." Dr. Park looked up. "Yes, I noticed that too. No photos of family, no personal correspondence beyond business matters. This whole wing feels like a fortress built by someone who trusted no one." "Can you blame him?" She smiled sadly. "No, I suppose not." When she finished, her report was delivered to the court under seal. But Marcus got a copy as Axel's attorney, and they reviewed it together in the library. The final appraised value, $322 million, even more than Vincent's own estimate. "Jesus," Axel breathed. "Appreciation over time," Marcus explained. "Rare coins increased in value. The real estate holdings he documented have grown substantially. Even the cash, adjusted for inflation and investment potential." He shook his head. "Axel, this is generational wealth. This is never worry about money again for your kids, their kids' kids. If we get to keep it, you will." Dr. Park's report confirms everything we've claimed. The assets were clearly placed in the East Wing deliberately. The documentation is meticulous. There's no question about Vincent's intent. The final hearing was scheduled for March 15th, 6 weeks after the initial court date. 6 weeks of living in limbo, of watching his children struggle, of wondering if fighting for this fortune was destroying his family in the process. The night before the final hearing, Maya came to him with an envelope. "What's this?" "Something I wrote. For the judge. if she'll let me speak." Axel opened it and read his daughter's words, written in her careful handwriting. "Your Honor, my name is Maya Morrison. I'm 12 years old. My mum died when I was 10. For the last 2 years, I've watched my dad work 2 jobs to keep us fed. I've made breakfast for my little brother and sister because Dad left for work before sunrise. I've hidden how scared I was because someone had to be strong. When Dad bought this house, I thought he was crazy. When he found the money, I thought our problems were over. But money doesn't solve problems. It just trades old problems for new ones. Now people hate us. They threaten us. They call my dad a thief for buying something legally and finding something left for him to find. My little sister has nightmares. My brother fights at school. I don't sleep anymore because I'm afraid someone will break in. But here's what I want you to know. My dad didn't ask for any of this. He just wanted to give us a home. And Mr. Harrington, the man who left the money, he wanted to help someone who needed it. We need it. Not to be rich, just to be safe, just to not be scared all the time. Whatever you decide, please remember we're just people, just a family trying to survive. We're not greedy, we're not criminals, we're just tired of fighting. Thank you, Maya Morrison." Axel's hands shook as he finished reading. Tears blurred his vision. "Maya!" "I know you'll say I don't have to do this, but I want to. I want her to know what this has cost us, what we're willing to give up if it means being safe again." He pulled her close and held on tight. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "For all of it." "Don't be sorry, just win." The courtroom was even more packed for the final hearing. National news networks had sent correspondents. Legal blogs were live streaming updates. The story had grown beyond Harrington Falls, beyond even the state. It had become a cultural touchstone, a referendum on wealth and inheritance and the American dream. Judge Chen took her seat and surveyed the room with hard eyes. "Before we begin, I want to address the media circus this case has become. What happens in this courtroom today is about law, not entertainment. I will not tolerate outbursts, demonstrations, or disruptions of any kind. Is that understood?" Murmurs of agreement. "Good. I've reviewed Dr. Park's appraisal, the historical documents, the trust papers, and all briefs submitted by both parties. I've also reviewed the transcripts from the 1984 case when these same claims were previously dismissed." Sullivan shifted in his seat. "Mr. Sullivan, your clients have argued that Vincent Harrington's fortune should not have transferred with the real estate, but the evidence clearly shows that Mr. Harrington intended exactly that. His trust documents are explicit, his personal notes confirm his wishes, and most importantly, there is no legal precedent for separating physical assets located within a structure from the sale of that structure itself." "Your Honor, we maintain that the sheer value involved creates an exception. The law doesn't work that way. Value doesn't determine legitimacy. If I ruled in your client's favor, I'd be setting a precedent that any valuable item found during a property purchase could be retroactively claimed by previous owners or their heirs. That would make all property transactions uncertain and undermine the entire concept of legal sale." Axel felt hope rising in his chest. Judge Chen turned to him. "Mr. Morrison, you purchased this property legally at a public auction. You discovered assets that the previous owner deliberately left to be found by whoever next owned the home. The documentation is clear, the intent is clear, and the law is clear." She paused. "It is the ruling of this court that all assets discovered within the Harrington Manor property are the legal property of Axel Morrison and his heirs. The claims brought by the Harrington cousins are dismissed with prejudice, meaning they cannot be refiled." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled for their phones. The cousins looked devastated. Sullivan gathered his papers with tight, angry movements. Axel sat frozen, unable to process what he'd just heard. Marcus grabbed his shoulder. "You won, Axel, you won." But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the beginning of something else entirely. Outside, the media frenzy was overwhelming. Axel made a brief statement, thanking the judge, thanking Marcus, and asking for privacy for his family. He didn't take questions. At home, the kids were waiting. Maya had watched the live stream online. She hugged him so hard it hurt. "We did it," she whispered. "Yeah, we did." But that night, after celebrating with pizza and soda, after putting the kids to bed, Axel stood in the East Wing surrounded by $322 million and felt nothing but dread. Because now came the hard part, deciding what kind of people they would become. The offers started immediately. Investment firms wanted to manage the fortune. Charities wanted donations. Individuals wrote letters asking for help, some genuine, most not. Distant relatives emerged from nowhere claiming they deserved a share. Axel ignored them all. Instead, he sat down with Marcus and a financial advisor named Patricia, who came highly recommended, and spent 3 days going over options. "First priority is security," Patricia said. "Not just physical security, but financial. This money needs to be protected in trusts, investments, structures that prevent it from being stolen, sued away, or squandered. I'm not going to squander it. You say that now. But lottery winners, sudden inheritors, they almost always lose everything within years. Not because they're stupid, but because they don't understand the weight of wealth. The people it attracts, the choices it forces. She wasn't wrong, they worked out a plan. The majority would go into trusts for the kids, untouchable until they turned 25. A portion would be invested conservatively, generating income. Another portion would go into a charitable foundation, and a small amount, relatively speaking, would be available for immediate needs. "How small?" Axel asked. 10 million. He almost laughed. 10 million was small. But Patricia was right. Compared to 322 million, it was a fraction. "What about the house?" Maya asked. She'd been sitting quietly, listening. "What about it?" "We can't stay here. It's too exposed. Everyone knows where we live." She was right. Of course she was right. "Where would we go?" "Somewhere normal. Somewhere we can just be a family again." Axel looked around the mansion, this impossible building that had given them everything and cost them so much. "Okay," he said, "we'll sell it." The decision to leave Harrington Manor was harder than Axel expected. Despite everything, despite the threats and the fear and the siege mentality, this place had been their home. The first real home they'd had since Emma died. But Maya was right. They couldn't stay. Not if they wanted any chance at a normal life. They put the mansion on the market 3 weeks after the final court ruling. The asking price was $12 million, reflecting both the historical significance and the recent notoriety. Offers came in immediately, but Axel was selective. He didn't want developers who'd tear it down. He didn't want wealthy collectors who'd turn it into a private museum no one could visit. He wanted someone who understood what the place represented. That someone turned out to be a historical preservation society based out of Richmond. They'd been following the case and reached out with a proposal. Purchase the property for $10 million, restore it to its original glory, and open it to the public as a museum dedicated to both architectural history and the story of Vincent Harrington. "We want to tell the full story," the director explained during a site visit. "Not just the fortune, but the man, his brilliance, his paranoia, his isolation, and how one family's discovery of his legacy changed everything." "What about the East Wing?" Axel asked. "We'd preserve it exactly as Vincent left it, create an exhibit showing how he lived, how he protected his wealth, how his final wishes were honored. It would be educational, not sensational." Axel looked at Maya, who'd been sitting quietly through the meeting. "What do you think?" She considered for a moment. "I think Mr. Harrington spent his whole life hiding. Maybe it's time people saw the truth." They accepted the offer. While the sale processed, Axel and the kids started looking for their next home. Not a mansion, not an estate, just a house. Normal, comfortable, somewhere they could disappear into regular life. They found it in a town called Riverside, 2 hours away from Harrington Falls. A 4-bedroom craftsman with a front porch and a backyard big enough for Sophie to play in. It cost $350,000, which felt obscene given what they now had access to, but Patricia reminded him that keeping perspective was crucial. "You don't need to prove anything by living small," she said, "but you also don't need to live large just because you can." The house was perfect. Carter got his own room with space for all his books. Sophie got the bedroom with the window seat she'd been dreaming about. Maya took the attic space, converted into a teenager's sanctuary with sloped ceilings and dormer windows. And Axel, for the first time in 2 years, had his own bedroom with a real bed instead of a sagging couch. Moving day felt like shedding skin. They packed up the few belongings they'd brought to the mansion and left everything else behind. The furniture, the history, the weight of Vincent Harrington's lonely legacy. "You okay?" Marcus asked, helping load boxes into a rented truck. Axel looked back at the mansion one last time. "Yeah, I think I am." "You're doing the right thing, you know, leaving, starting over." "I hope so." "I know so. Emma would be proud." The name hit him like it always did, sharp and sweet. "You think?" "She'd be proud you fought for your kids, proud you didn't let the money change who you are, proud you're smart enough to walk away from something toxic even when it's worth millions." Axel nodded, throat tight. They drove away from Harrington Manor on a sunny April morning, 3 kids in the back seat and a future that finally felt possible instead of terrifying. The town of Riverside didn't know who they were. The news coverage hadn't penetrated this far, or if it had, people didn't recognize them. Axel registered the kids in school under their real names. No hiding, no deception, but no one made the connection. For the first time in months, they were anonymous. Carter made friends with a boy next door who loved baseball. Sophie joined an art class at the community center. Maya, cautious at first, eventually joined the debate team and found herself thriving in an environment where no one knew her story. "I like it here," she told Axel one evening while they cooked dinner together. "No one asks about the money. No one cares." "That's kind of the point." "I know, I'm just saying," she smiled. "It's nice to be normal again." But even as they settled into normal life, the foundation work was beginning. Axel had decided to honor Emma's memory by creating something that would help families dealing with what they'd dealt with. The Emma Morrison Foundation launched 6 months after the court ruling. Its mission was simple: provide financial support to families facing catastrophic medical expenses from cancer treatment. Pay for medications insurance wouldn't cover. Cover rent and utilities when someone couldn't work because they were caring for a sick spouse. Fund experimental treatments that might save lives. The foundation started with an endowment of $50 million. Patricia assured him the investments would generate enough annual income to help dozens of families without ever touching the principal. "You're creating something that will outlive you," she said. "Something that will help people long after you're gone." The first grant went to a family in Tennessee, a mother with stage 4 breast cancer and 3 kids under 10. Her husband had maxed out credit cards trying to pay for treatment. They were facing eviction. The foundation paid off their debt, covered 6 months of rent, and funded an experimental immunotherapy trial that insurance had denied. 3 months later, the mother went into remission. "You saved her life," the husband wrote in a tear-stained letter. "You saved our family. We don't know who you are or why you helped us, but thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you." Axel read the letter to his kids that night at dinner. Sophie asked, "Is this what Mummy would have wanted?" "Yeah, baby. This is exactly what she would have wanted." Over the next year, the foundation helped 47 families, paid for treatments, covered expenses, gave people hope when they'd run out of options. Axel stayed anonymous, never seeking credit, never appearing at events. He just quietly approved grants and watched as the money did what money should do, made life better for people who needed it. But he didn't stop there. Harrington Falls, despite everything, still held a piece of his heart. The town had struggled for years, businesses closing, young people leaving, hope fading. Axel remembered what Dorothy had said about Vincent Harrington. He'd made his fortune and then hidden it away, helping no one. Axel was determined to be different. Working through a series of anonymous donations, he funded the renovation of the elementary school the kids had briefly attended. New computers, updated textbooks, a library that hadn't seen new books in a decade. He funded a scholarship program for local students who wanted to attend college. He donated to the food bank, the women's shelter, the youth center. None of it carried his name. All of it made a difference. Marcus helped coordinate everything, setting up structures that kept Axel's identity hidden while ensuring the money went where it was needed most. "You're basically a secret philanthropist," Marcus joked during one of their planning sessions. "I'm just trying to do what's right." Most people wouldn't. Most people would buy yachts and vacation homes and forget where they came from. "I can't forget. Emma won't let me." It was true. He felt her presence in every decision, heard her voice in his head, reminding him of what mattered. Not the money, never the money, but what the money could do when used with purpose. The kids were thriving in Riverside. Carter made the honor roll. Sophie won a prize in an art competition. And Maya, beautiful, brilliant Maya, was starting to smile again. Really smile, not the careful, practiced smile she'd worn for 2 years while carrying weight she was too young to bear. "I'm thinking about college," she mentioned one night. She was 14 now, shooting up tall and lanky, looking more like Emma every day. "You've got time to think about that." "I know, but I've been researching programs. There's this pre-law track at a school in Virginia. They focus on social justice, helping people who can't afford legal representation." Axel felt his chest swell with pride. "That sounds perfect for you." "I keep thinking about everything that happened, how hard it was to fight for what was ours, how many people don't have lawyers like Uncle Marcus or resources to protect themselves." She looked at him. "I want to be the person who helps them." "Your mom would love that." "Yeah, I think she would." 2 years after they'd left Harrington Manor, the museum opened to the public. Axel drove back for the ceremony, bringing the kids but staying out of the spotlight. They watched from the back as the Preservation Society director gave a speech about Vincent Harrington's life, his genius, his tragedy, and his unexpected gift to a struggling family. "This mansion stands as a reminder," the director said, "that wealth without connection is merely weight. That genius without compassion is simply isolation, and that sometimes the greatest fortunes are the ones we give away." They toured the museum quietly, slipping through crowds who didn't recognize them. The main house had been restored beautifully, each room recreated to show how it had looked in its glory days. But it was the East Wing that drew the biggest crowds. Preserved behind glass, the rooms where Vincent had stored his fortune were now exhibits. Visitors could see the neat stacks of cash, the gold bars, the jewelry, all of it protected but visible. Placards explained his investment strategies, his paranoid security measures, his final letter. And in the last room, a display told their story. Photos of Axel and the kids, carefully chosen to show their journey without exposing their current life. The court documents, Maya's letter to the judge, a timeline of events. At the end, a simple message. The Morrison family chose to honor Vincent Harrington's wishes by using this fortune to help others. Through charitable work, community support, and quiet generosity, they've demonstrated that wealth's true value lies not in possession, but in purpose. Sophie read it slowly, then looked up at Axel. "That's us." "Yes, sweetheart, that's us." "Are we famous?" "We were. For a little while. But now we're just regular people who got lucky and tried to do something good with it. I like being regular people. Me too. They left the museum without fanfare, piling back into their normal sedan, and drove home to their normal house in their normal town where no one cared about fortunes or legacies or anything except whether you were kind and showed up when you said you would. On the 3rd anniversary of Emma's death, Axel visited her grave alone. It was in a small cemetery outside Harrington Falls, under an oak tree she'd always loved. The headstone was simple. Emma Louise Morrison, beloved wife and mother, 1979 to 2022. He sat in the grass beside her and talked like he always did. We made it, Em. I know there were times I wasn't sure we would, but we made it. The kids are good, happy even. Maya's talking about becoming a lawyer. Carter wants to be a teacher. Sophie's painting everything she sees, and it's actually good, like really good. I think about you every day, miss you every day, but I don't feel lost anymore. For a long time after you died, I felt like I was drowning, barely keeping my head above water. Then we found the mansion and the money and everything got crazy. But now I feel like I'm swimming. Not just surviving, but actually living. I'm using the money the way you would have wanted. Helping people, making a difference. I bought a house with a porch swing like you always wanted. Planted roses in the garden like you used to talk about. I'm trying to build the life we dreamed of, even though you're not here to see it. I hope you're proud of us, proud of how the kids turned out, proud of the choices I made, proud that I didn't let the money turn us into something we're not. The wind rustled through the oak leaves and Axel let himself imagine it was her answer. The foundation grew. By year 5, it had helped over 200 families. By year 10, over 1,000. The endowment had grown through smart investments, generating enough income to expand the mission beyond cancer to include other catastrophic illnesses. Axel stayed involved, but stepped back from day-to-day operations, hiring qualified people who shared the vision. He served on the board, approved major decisions, but mostly just watched as the foundation took on a life of its own. One afternoon, a woman showed up at his door. She was maybe 40, with kind eyes and nervous hands. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Jennifer Wallace. I don't know if you remember, but 5 years ago your foundation helped my family. My daughter had leukemia. We were out of options, out of money, out of hope. And then we got a letter saying someone was paying for an experimental treatment." Axel remembered. A 8-year-old girl with a smile that could light up a room, even from a hospital bed. "How is she?" Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "She's cancer-free, 14 years old now and cancer-free. She plays soccer, gets good grades, drives me crazy like any teenager, and she's alive because of you. I just provided the money. The doctors had given up. Insurance wouldn't cover it. We'd exhausted every option. You gave us a chance when no one else would." She pulled an envelope from her purse. "My daughter wrote you a letter. I know you probably get a lot of these, but I wanted to deliver this one personally." Axel took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside, in teenage handwriting decorated with doodles and hearts, was a simple message. "Dear Mr. Morrison, thank you for saving my life. I don't know why you helped my family, but because of you I got to grow up. I got to go to middle school and learn algebra, even though it's super hard. I got to make best friends and have sleepovers and fight with my little brother about whose turn it is to do dishes. I got to live. And someday when I'm older and I figure out what I want to do with my life, I'm going to help people too. I'm going to pay it forward like you did, because you showed me that one person really can change everything. Thank you. Love, Ashley." Axel couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He just stood there holding this letter from a girl he'd never met, but whose life he'd helped save. "I should go," Jennifer said gently. "I just wanted you to know what you did, what you're still doing." After she left, Axel sat on his porch swing and read the letter 3 more times. Then he called his kids down. "I want to show you something." He read Ashley's letter aloud. When he finished, the 4 of them sat together in silence. "This is why we fought for it," Maya said finally. "The money, the court case, all of it. This is why it mattered." "Yeah," Axel agreed. "This is why." Maya graduated high school with honors and a full scholarship to William and Mary. She didn't need the scholarship, of course, but she'd earned it and wanted to accept it on her own merit. Axel understood. She'd been independent since she was 10 years old. A free ride to college was just another thing she'd achieved through her own efforts. At her graduation party, surrounded by friends who knew nothing about mansions or fortunes or court battles, she pulled Axel aside. "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "When I turn 25 and the trust becomes accessible, I want to put most of it into the foundation. Keep enough for security, for my future kids' education, but the rest should go to helping people." Axel felt his throat tighten. "You don't have to do that." "I know. But Mom died because cancer is expensive and unfair and crushes families who can't afford to fight it. And we got lucky, found a fortune that let us fight back. But most people don't get lucky. They just lose. Maya, I want to be the luck for someone else. I want some other family to get the letter saying they don't have to choose between medicine and rent. That someone out there cares enough to help." He pulled her into a hug. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." Carter followed a different path. He became a high school history teacher, working in underfunded schools in rural areas where most teachers wouldn't go. He used his own money, quietly and without fanfare, to buy supplies for students who couldn't afford them, set up a fund to help kids attend field trips, made sure no student went hungry by keeping granola bars and peanut butter in his desk. "I remember what it felt like to be the kid whose dad worked 3 jobs, he told Axel during a visit home. "I remember Maya making breakfast because you'd already left for work. I remember being scared we'd lose the apartment. And I know there are kids at my school living that same story right now. So if I can make it a little easier for them, I'm going to." Sophie became an artist, but not the starving kind. She used her art to raise awareness and money for causes that mattered. Painted murals in low-income neighborhoods, created pieces that were auctioned off for charity, taught free art classes to kids who couldn't afford formal lessons. "Art saved me," she explained. "When everything was scary and loud, I could disappear into drawing, so I want to give that gift to other kids who need an escape." Watching his children become exactly the people Emma had hoped they'd be filled Axel with a pride so profound it was almost painful. 10 years after finding the fortune, Axel was invited to speak at a philanthropy conference. He'd turned down every interview, every speaking request, every opportunity for attention. But this was different. This was a room full of people actually doing the work, not just talking about it. He stood at the podium looking out at hundreds of faces and spoke from the heart. "My name is Axel Morrison. 12 years ago, I was a widowed father of 3, working as a carpenter, barely making ends meet. I bought a mansion for $8,000 because I was desperate to give my kids a home, and I found $322 million hidden in a sealed wing. People called it luck, some called it destiny, a few called it theft, but I call it responsibility. Because finding that fortune didn't solve my problems. It created new ones. It put my family in danger. It exposed us to threats and scrutiny and pressure most people never face. The easy thing would have been to take the money and run, buy a private island, disappear. But my wife, before she died, made me promise that our kids would never forget how to hope. And hope isn't something you hoard, it's something you share. So we fought for the fortune, not because we were greedy, but because we wanted the chance to do something meaningful with it. And when we won, we made choices. We left the mansion because we wanted normal life. We created a foundation because we wanted to help families like ours. We gave quietly because the work mattered more than the credit. And here's what I learned. Wealth isn't about how much you have, it's about what you do with what you have. Vincent Harrington died alone with $300 million and 0 people who mourned him. But the families we've helped through the foundation, they'll remember. Not our names, maybe, but the moment when help arrived, the moment when hope wasn't lost. That's legacy, not the money in your bank account, but the lives you touch with it. The room erupted in applause, but Axel barely heard it. He was thinking about Emma, about Vincent Harrington, about all the families the foundation had helped and would continue to help long after he was gone. Afterward, people approached him with questions, with their own stories, with thanks. He listened to each one, shook hands, made connections that would lead to collaborations and expanded impact. But the moment that mattered most came from a young man who waited until the crowd had dispersed. "Mr. Morrison? My name is David. 10 years ago, your foundation helped my family when my mom had ovarian cancer, paid for treatment that saved her life." Axel felt his chest tighten. "How is she?" "She's great. Cancer-free 8 years now. Works as a nurse helping other cancer patients. Says she survived so she could help others survive." "That's wonderful. But I wanted to tell you something. Because of what you did for us, because of how you helped when we had nothing, I decided to become a doctor. I just finished my residency in oncology. I'm going to spend my career treating cancer patients who can't afford care. I'm going to be for other families what your foundation was for mine." Axel couldn't speak, could barely see through the tears. "Thank you," David said simply, "for showing me that one person really can make a difference." As Axel drove home that evening, he thought about the ripple effect. One fortune, found by accident, had helped hundreds of families, and some of those families were now helping others, and those others would help still more. On and on, spreading out like rings in water, touching lives he'd never know about in ways he couldn't measure. That night, he wrote a letter to his children, not to be read until after he died, but to be kept safe until the time came. "Dear Maya, Carter, and Sophie, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And I hope you're not too sad because I lived a full life, more than full, extraordinary. I want you to know that finding Vincent Harrington's fortune was both the best and worst thing that ever happened to us. Best because it gave us security, opportunity, and the ability to help others. Worst because it exposed us to darkness we never would have faced otherwise. But I'd do it all again. Every threat, every court battle, every sleepless night. Because it led to this, a foundation that has helped thousands of families. 3 children who grew up understanding that wealth is responsibility, a legacy that will outlive us all. Your mother died believing the world was fundamentally good, but needed good people to prove it. I think we proved it. Not through grand gestures or public displays, but through quiet, consistent choices to use what we had to help others. Keep the foundation going. Keep helping people. Keep being the kind of humans who see suffering and respond with compassion. That's the real inheritance. Not the money, but the values. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I know your mother is watching from wherever she is, proud beyond measure of the people you've become. Dad. He sealed the letter and locked it away with his important documents, hoping it wouldn't be needed for many years, but wanting his final thoughts preserved. 15 years after finding the fortune, Axel stood in the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new Emma Morrison Cancer Treatment Center. Built with foundation funds, it provided free care to uninsured patients, focusing on the kind of aggressive treatment Emma had needed but couldn't fully afford. Maya stood beside him, now a civil rights attorney who took on cases no one else would touch. Carter had driven in from the rural school where he taught. Sophie had created a massive mural for the center's lobby, depicting families holding hands, surrounded by hope. "Mum would love this," Maya said, looking up at the building that bore their mother's name. "Yeah," Axel agreed. "She really would." That evening, the whole family gathered at the house in Riverside. Maya's husband and their newborn daughter, Carter's partner, Sophie and her girlfriend, Marcus and his family, Patricia, the financial advisor who'd become a close friend. They sat around the dinner table, cramped and loud and perfect, and shared stories. "Remember when Dad bid on that mansion and we thought he'd lost his mind?" Carter laughed. "I still think he lost his mind," Maya teased, "but it worked out." "What was it like?" Maya's daughter asked. She was Carter and Sophie's niece, named Emma after the grandmother she'd never meet. "Finding all that money?" Axel considered the question carefully. Scary mostly. Exciting too, but scary, because money that big comes with weight, expectations, danger. We weren't ready for it. "But you figured it out," Sophie said. "We did, because we had each other, and because we never forgot where we came from." Later, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Axel sat on his porch swing and looked up at the stars. He thought about Vincent Harrington, alone in his mansion, protecting a fortune no one would inherit. He thought about Emma, fighting cancer while worrying about how their kids would survive without her. He thought about Maya at 12, too grown up too fast. Carter's black eye from fighting bullies. Sophie's nightmares. And he thought about Ashley, the girl whose life the foundation had saved. About David, the doctor inspired to help others. About the thousands of families who'd received help when they needed it most. None of it would have happened without that $8,000 gamble on a mansion no one else wanted. Sometimes the greatest fortunes come from taking chances when everyone else walks away. Sometimes courage looks like a widowed father bidding on a broken-down house because he's desperate to give his children a home. And sometimes the measure of a man isn't in the wealth he accumulates, but in the wisdom to know that true fortune is never about the money itself. It's about what the money allows you to become. Axel Morrison had found $322 million, but what he'd really found was purpose, redemption, a way to honor his wife's memory and secure his children's future while helping countless others along the way. The mansion, the fortune, the court battles, all of it had been worth it. Not for the money, but for the journey, for the lessons learned and the lives touched, for the reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope can be found if you're brave enough to look for it. Anyone can change the world if they're stubborn enough to stand their ground and brave enough to use their fortune for good. As the morning sun warmed the porch of the modest riverside home, Axel Morrison didn't reach for architectural plans or estate documents. He reached for his phone to approve another foundation grant, this time for a family in Oregon with twin daughters fighting leukemia. This time, they wouldn't face that fight alone. He knew now the fight he'd stumbled into wasn't just about his family. It belonged to every working-class person who'd been told to keep quiet, every parent who'd chosen between medicine and groceries, and every child who'd watched their family crumble under medical debt. The carpenter who'd bought a broken mansion for $8,000 had become the man who rebuilt broken lives. Because for Axel and for everyone he'd helped, hope was never out of reach. It just needed someone bold enough to fight for it. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories of hope, heart, and second chances. Click to ride with us and don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe some dreams are meant to be rebuilt.